Alright guys, I'm thinking about building one more two-stroke bike, and I think this time I'll actually document it so that you can all see some of the steps that I took to make this happen.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is a fresh out of the box 80cc kit, and this is the first I'm seeing of it. So is going to be done over a series of days, just depending on when I get the time to actually put these clips together. And to you guys it'll all be one video, but this is just to kind of explain why my clothing may change from clip to clip. So there's an awful lot of videos out there of people saying that these kits are not very good out of the box. And I have to argue that experiences differ. So just because one person has a bad experience with these kits does not mean that they're all going to be the same. Now I myself have put together 3 of these engines already. And this being said, I've experienced some issues with the very first engine I built. Now one might think, well, why didn't you send it back? And that's a really good question. And the answer is simple. I had a lot of work into my bike by the time I found some of these pitfalls. And the first one we're going to address is coming up next. But first, let's just see what we got. Okay, perfect. It's the 2-piece head. That's the design I like. Everything looks okay so far. Alright, so the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take this gas tank and you're going to want to locate the petcock, which is going to be in your hardware box. You're going to want to screw that in, and then you're going to want to fill this thing up with gas. The very first kit I put together leaked like a sieve when I filled the gas can up. I remember getting so excited. I spent all that time assembling the bike. I had it all together. There was some fitting issues with the motor, and once I got everything together and thought I was good to go, out came the gas can, in filled the tank, and all of a sudden a waterfall of gas was coming out, and I was left wondering where the heck it was coming from. It turned out it had a breach along the seam here, and it actually had a breach here at the weld that takes the petcock. So, a no good gas tank. That's why that red and black Schwinn Sidewinder of mine has a lawnmower tank. Maybe we can keep my Yamaha company while we build a cheaper motorcycle. And by cheaper, I mean cheaper. We're going to want to locate our petcock, which is going to be in this hardware bag here, along with various other nuts and bolts and pieces of throttle body and whatever. Just, they kind of throw everything into one spot. Now this is actually the first time that my gas cap has been wrapped in a nice little package, so I know that the seller that I bought this from must be on the up and up. Seems like a pretty good guy. He sent me a direct message, actual personal message about this kit. You know, just telling me to alert him if anything goes wrong. So I'll have to recommend his eBay to you guys. Alright, so within the hardware bag we have our petcock, fuel valve, whatever you want to call it. And we got our gas cap. The gas cap's not so important right now. Right now, what we're just trying to confirm is the integrity of the tank. So let's get some gas in this thing. Now this is a mixture of 16:1. That's what they recommend for a break-in for these bikes for the first couple 100 kilometers or so. And I kind of just keep it that way because, well, the richer you run them, the longer they'll last, in my honest opinion. So far I don't see any Niagara gas falls happening, so we seem to be in the clear. It's also a good thing to note that you may want to attach your carburetor here in a mock-up fuel system, because carburetors that come in these kits can also have issues. This has a little bit of a float height adjustment that needs to be done to it, but it's probably not a very big deal. I don't see any actual leaks coming out of anywhere, so far so good. Okay, that's mostly full. I don't see any seep leaks. It appears that she is a solid tank. I don't even think we're leaking out of the studs either. Nope. That's another place you want to pay attention to. These studs will come with little rubber shoes on them to kind of protect the threads. And sometimes they don't get these welds quite good, or whatever they use to seal them into the tank. Sometimes there's a breach here too. It's pretty common. So And if you do happen to get a good tank, just make sure you don't bend these guys, because you can cause a breach. It's not like this stuff is high quality. Anyway, so the next thing we're going to address is the engine itself. Now, there's a whole slew of other components in that bag, including the ignition coil, the spark plug. My first kit, when I put it together on the black and red Schwinn, I had some issues with my ignition coil. It was it came all busted and broken apart, the plastic, and what I actually ended up doing was gluing it back together, and it worked. You know, again, probably some people would say send it back, but for a $7-8 part, and that's about what they cost to replace, I figured I might as well just glue the thing back together. It really wasn't worth my time to send it back. So, as for the other parts, such as the ignition coil, spark plug, the chain, all of this has varying levels of quality differences, and I really can't say for sure what is going to be busted and what isn't, what is more likely to not work and what isn't. I've heard a lot of people say that the spark plugs that come in these kits aren't good. So far, I've had good luck with all 3 kits that I've built. My friend Will's bike and my 2 bikes both had no problems with their spark plugs. The thing that probably goes without saying is that you may want to go around your engine and make sure that everything is tight. On my other bike, and I featured this in a video, my magneto came off, but that was after several hundred miles of travel. I don't consider this to be too much of a failure because I had already been riding the bike around for several years, and it was just one day that I decided to take her for a top speed run to see what she really could do now that she was fully broke in, and that's when my magneto came off. The vibration was too much for it, so that was the first major failure I had with these engines, but it was a pretty easy remedy, though I will say my crankshaft is not happy. Looks like a good clutch basket. Looks a little dry, however, so a little bit dry for my taste. I'll definitely be going through this basket once again, and we'll probably grease the heck out of it. Well, my engine's not locked up, so that's good. Turns freely. Okay, so now we're on to the next thing.
Okay, so here's the slippery slope on these bike kits. The bike frames themselves, every frame is different, and I found in every build I've done that I had to do something custom to get the motor to fit. Even the beach cruiser frames, which these engines are supposedly based on, or based for mounting up to, I had complications and had to do a little bit of tweaking to get it to work. A special bracket had to be purchased. It wasn't included with the kit. It wasn't too expensive. It just sucked because it meant that the kit couldn't be completed in one day's time. We had to wait some time to actually finish it up. The 2 pointers I can give you are don't give up and be prepared to use your imagination a little bit. You're probably going to end up going to the hardware store or online looking for some various solutions on how to mount your kit up. You'll see what I did for this project, and hopefully it kind of opens and broadens your horizons on what to do.
So we're going to be loading up the red bike here, my Schwinn Sierra, and my engine kit, of course. I'm also going to be stealing the grinder wheel for a little while, and I'm bringing everything down south to my house down there, because I got the rest of my tools down there. But I figured before I go that I would point this out. So my 100cc here didn't quite fit this bike frame the way I wanted to. So they send you in some kits they send you this adapter plate, and it kind of works, but it's kind of crappy. There's a better one on Amazon that actually includes 2 U-bolts and is a bit longer. It's the same idea, and that one holds the engine much truer to the frame, though it does look kind of hokey, but it will hold the engine solid to the frame. Some of you may be noticing this hose clamp here. This is a a necessary evil because I wasn't able to get their exhaust bracket to work with this setup, and on my other bike they didn't even send me an exhaust bracket. So both of these bikes have hose clamps, kind of utilizing the exhaust as a mount in a way, because without this it will actually vibrate these 2 screws loose and your pipe will pretty much just sag right off. depending on the vibration, it can damage the threading in the head too, so that's no good. You don't want that. Hey guys, welcome back. This is a pretty common problem with this engine kit, and that's that many times when you mount these, you'll get collisions with the pedal to this case, and especially exhaust pipe to pedal. That's been my most common problem over and over and over again. In fact, on my kit up north, my engine sits slightly canted just to clear the pedals. Now, on my red bike, we were very determined to get it done. So we decided to do a little modification. It's pretty ugly. But we bent this pipe. So it used to come out on the same angle and was kind of out here. And we put a major bend in the pipe with wood not attached to the engine, of course. Never, ever, ever bend these pipes attached to the engine. You'll just ruin your threads. So we took this pipe and we clamped it and we smacked away, torched, and we even hit it with a hammer a few times. Pretty ugly bend in it right there, you know. But it works. And then we hose clamped it to the frame, which it looks ugly, but it does the job. In the instructions included in the kit, they do say that sometimes you have to bend these pipes to clear the frame, and this is absolutely true. Obviously, I can tell that some people are probably thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to bake my paint. It's very possible. These engines do get hot. So far, I've been pretty lucky in that department. I don't know how, because that pipe does get pretty burning hot, but whatever. I would say that if you're mounting this engine to your bike, it better be a bike intended only for that, because they are going to see different types of wear. Let's face it, it's a bicycle and this is a backyard mechanic sort of deal. If you're entering this kind of realm of work, you know, if you're entering this, you're doing it purely as an experimental thing. So be prepared to have to modify stuff, because you're going to have to. There is no cut and dry perfect instruction, because every bike frame is different. Every degree of bend is different. So just pretend you're some sort of old-timey bicyclist from 1900 and you're building the first motorcycles, because that's kind of what it feels like.
So interestingly enough, my frame's water bottle mount up happens to be in the perfect spot on this frame. I can actually use it as an added structural component for my engine's front mount. And now all we'll have to do is get some longer rear mount studs to bridge the distance back there.
That's the idea. We got ourselves some stainless steel threaded rod. Couldn't get this at either of the hardware stores in my town. Had to get it on Amazon. Isn't that ridiculous? They had hardly anything for metric. So, this is an M8 125 thread rod. This is a bit longer than I wanted, so obviously we're going to have to cut it, and I guess I probably didn't need to. Probably could have just settled for one, but then again, maybe I did need to, because looking at that ain't going to be long enough. So, I guess we didn't overbuy. Good. Always good to overbuy anyway. Shh. One sec. Yep. That works pretty good. Didn't really booger the thread up too much, so that method works great. I've seen a lot of these really fancy triggers on game controllers and guns and stuff, but you know, they're supposed to enhance like the grip. But how dedicated are you to your grip unless you're actually putting grooves into your actual callus? You see, that shows true dedication right there. So you want to heat this up to about 900 degrees, and then you just want to rest your finger on it. You know, this will forever change your fingerprints too, so that's a tip for all you crooks out there. Yep, that's true dedication. You want your finger to have the grip. That's what you want. It's cyborg rules. So Now, this is kind of the idea that I was thinking up here. And I left these a little long because I'm not exactly sure the placement and adjustment yet. But also, I'm probably going to leave them long for a while because you just never know if we need an extra mounting place. This could be the exact ideal place for, say, maybe a different type of derailleur or just derailleur setup, tensioner, excuse me. I know that this won't directly mount to these, but who's to say we don't get some kind of different bracketry, and maybe this is the place where we're mounting it all. On to my least favorite part of these kind of projects. This is very tedious. You got, 9 bolts. I'm going to go ahead and already cut this rubber right here. So I'm going to go ahead and aim the teeth inward towards the hub so that it keeps it away from the frame as far as possible. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this because it takes forever. I'm just doing this to show you guys. I'm not actually mounting it this way, but I'll tell you something. This hub profile, with how fat it was, the inner or the outer diameter of the hub, really had me nervous. But I think I'll be able to slink my way through most of these. Guys, I have one little problem I'm going to have to sort out here, and that's that the chain is colliding with my lower fork. And no tensioner is going to be able to solve this problem. Basically, I'm going to need to make one of these thinner. Now, there are 2 that they send you. There's one that's slightly fatter than this, and of course I chose to cut the wrong one. I had this one on the back side of the hub there and on the inside. But I don't think it's really going to matter. But basically, I have to take the rubber thickness here and cut it down probably about half. I basically need the sprocket to sit here on the hub, because any further out and then we collide right here with this fork. Where it wants to sit right now, even with the thinner of the 2 that they sent me, it kind of wants to sit basically even right there with the inner diameter, or with that inner part of the hub. That's kind of where it wants to sit, nice and square, but the trouble is, like I said, it keeps colliding there. Alright guys, little progress update for you all. Just got the chain grinded up. And because I hoard everything, I had everything I needed up in my north shop. So I went ahead and extended on my chain here. About a couple links there, 2 ins and 1 out. I had a master link floating around because the chain that came with my silver bike was such a piece of crap, it kept falling apart. I had to replace it, and when I did, I got another master link, so of course I held on to the crappy chain. And it looks like that comes in handy. So this is really coming together good, isn't it, Kara? Say hi to Kara, everybody. She just woke up from a nap, so I figured she could kind of come out here with the presentation. Anyway, I had a piece of rubber up there, one of the spacers, just kind of waiting in one of my toolboxes, much thinner. So I did go ahead and choke that sprocket as close to the hub as I possibly could, but it still wasn't enough to get away from the frame. So we're going to have to employ the old tensioner. But that's fine, because as the chain ages and stretches, we can account for that. Luckily, the one they sent me is the good one, the double mount right there. Now, I've employed the single mount on that bike over there, the old Suicide tensioner, and it hasn't failed me in the way that it, is known to, so I've gotten lucky with that. But I am quite confident in this project. I cannot wait to get that exhaust pipe bended, get the gas tank mounted, clutch, all that stuff, carburetor, and get on to our first ride with this dang thing. Of course, I want to get me a speedometer of some type. I've been looking on eBay for some things.
A few days later, I ended up traveling up north to do some work on the property with my dad, and I brought the exhaust pipe with me. Using a bench vise, we bent the pipe slowly, took a few tries at it, and eventually we got it to fit the current layout of the engine and frame.
There.
Okay, let's see if we did it.
That's much better. Just one more visit to the bench. We'll probably have it. As Larry the Cable Guy would say, getting her done. It's been the only solution that I've ever been able to figure out for this stupid problem. because it seems like this always happens. You know, my other bike has a thicker tube. This is a much thinner tubing. The only bike I got away with it on without having to bend was the old Nishiki here. But it did collide. I remember it did collide here. We just kind of, if you look at this engine and the way it's mounted, you'll notice it's just ever so slightly slanted. It's not quite mounted square in this frame, which is not ideal, but it stays that way, so we leave it alone. And I guess I'll address this since I just walked past it. I was eyeballing this as a option. This was a gift from Brandon, but the difficulty with this is it brings this bean and tailpipe right up to your leg. You'd have to consciously pedal like this. You wouldn't want to get burned by that. So, I think the downflow pipe is the most practical. Problem solved. Well, guys, all that's left to do is mount the gas tank, carburetor, put the pipe back on now that it fits, and put a bracketry between it. That's this guy. Mount up our controls, spark plug and ignition, of course. Grease the gearbox, and she should be pretty much ready to go. I'm going to try to pick out a speedometer before we hit the road on this thing. That could take a few days to show up. There's always something I forget about. I forgot about having to take these off, so I'm going to have to go get my heat gun and swap them out. I actually like those grips more, to be honest, but in my first kit that I did over there, this guy was a solid plastic piece, and it arrived to me busted. I actually ended up gluing it back together and then going around the glue job with Gorilla Tape, which is still doing the job to this day. But yeah, that was one of the items that arrived to me broken. This one's nice and rubber, so yeah, that's cool. I'm probably going to go ahead and slip this through this ignition mounting here. Kind of keeps everything tidy and out of the way. Oh, right in the chin. Perfect. I'm well aware of the air nozzle trick. I can tell that someone's going to probably say that in the comments. I know about it. I just don't have a chuck around here. There's another thing I don't like about these kits, are these crappy clutches. They're okay, they look good, it fits the bike, but the automatic feature is kind of garbage. The button style is much better. I've actually had this lever just completely fall off when I wasn't looking. So before I even hook that clutch up, this is usually how I do this. You want to pull as much slack as you possibly can, hold it with a vice grip, and then set your set screw in. These have a habit of stretching and slipping, so I always leave this length just kind of hanging because the adjustments change over time. And it doesn't take much. These clutches do not have a lot of in-between grab and no grab, as you can see. So that's just an easy way to do it. And then I can go over here and fiddle with that. Well, guys, we're getting pretty close. Pretty dang close. You know it's getting close to that seeing the light at the end of the tunnel when you see me putting a fuel line on a carb here. And I'm probably going to leave this guy sloppy and long. I've got a few things on the bike that are being left that way just for now, because I'm not really planning on riding it anywhere until I get that speedometer on there. I really want to record as accurately as possible the miles I've traveled on this bike. And though there are some pedal miles on every one of these kits, so you can't fully claim they've gone as far as they have, you can still pretty much claim it. This is going to be a touch goofy, but we can always shorten it later. It's for extra capacity. So aside from the speedometer not being here, the other reason I'm not going to really take this thing on any kind of ride is they have a habit when you first get them going, these kits, of just walking out of adjustment. Things like the clutch and cableage. There's just stuff that usually comes up. Typically the I noticed a lot of chain slop will develop almost immediately. Things stretch is what I'm saying. And there's no real way for me to tell what's going to do what. So the best thing to do is just get it running and listen to it. Grease helps the gasket stick. Lubes the threads. Does wonders. You know, an interesting thought comes to mind. I've never actually ridden this bike without an engine. All I did was bring it home and put it in the garage. And I guess I never will. Got some pretty high quality fuel going in here. Not really, but the two-stroke oil is. Well, we're down to the wire for our first run. I didn't even bother to put a grip on this thing because I'm not sure if I like these or not. Don't know if my camera's aiming very good. And you know that disaster is always imminent with the first run. I've had quite a lot of things come out of the blue right in the first few seconds. Never had any engines grenade yet, so you know. But I have had chain mishaps. Looks like that's gonna be a reality today. Oh, this is gonna be fun, having to mess with these things. I'm gonna have to retighten that. It's just a test run. Nothing serious. Hey, she spits and fires. How about that? Wasn't going to be able to catch it, I knew it. Well, it runs. That's cool. Doesn't seem to want to run with the choke, so probably because of how warm it is today. Nothing's adjusted at all. They usually come fairly adjusted. Might have to do a little bit of tweaking with that idle. Definitely going to have to adjust the idle a little bit. I got a nice breeze coming through here. I'm going to just keep this thing running. Hell yeah. Well, definitely needs some idle adjustments, but that's not bad. She started right up. Came right to life.
Stay tuned for the next episode, guys. We'll get a speedometer put on it. I'll show you how to roll the miles back since it's a vintage one. And we'll take this thing on its first mile. Be a little short and sweet.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. A running bike from out of the box to in the frame. I mean, really, that's a good way to end this episode. And now I got a huge mess to take care of, so, you know, it's not bothering me. Take it easy.